Hello, my name is Chris Lehman. I am a musician based out of the greater Boston area. Thank you for stopping by my channel. Today, we are going to be taking a look at two themes from the original Transformers movie, composed by Steve Jablonsky. The movie was released in 2007. We are going to be taking a look at the Arrival to Earth theme and Bumblebee's theme, breaking them down harmonically, rhythmically, melodically to see what it is that makes them so memorable, so epic, and so heroic. Let's hop on over into Ableton and we'll get right into it. Okay, so here we are over in Ableton. Let's take a listen to the Arrival to Earth theme first, and then we'll dive right into it. Okay, so I am a fan of breaking down themes in the piano roll as opposed to on sheet music, just because it is easier for me to visualize. I learned everything I know about music for the most part producing EDM, so I'm much more familiar with the piano roll than I am with sheet music, although I think that there's a lot of value to that. But it's nice to be able to see everything all at once, and in the piano roll, it makes it nice and simple. We can actually make this even more simple if we fold everything. So we just get the notes that are being used. So the piece is in D minor, as are a lot of the themes from the Transformers movies. Hans Zimmer is definitely a big fan of D minor, as are a lot of his pupils, and just a lot of people in film music in general. It is a great key for writing orchestral music and heroic, epic themes. D minor is going to be a good key to be working in. Might be a little bit overdone, but that's fine. Listeners don't know that. So anyways, the theme is very repetitive and very simple, both harmonically and rhythmically. And this is, on the one hand, this gets some criticism. There is this notion out there that the Transformers music is sort of like boring trailer music. And I don't like that. I think that it's harmonically relatively simple and melodically relatively simple, but I think that the orchestration, what Steve does with these themes to make them so big and massive takes a remarkable amount of skill. You can't just do that overnight. And I think that there's intention behind it. Without getting too into the weeds of it, I think that there's something very it captures the heroic and sort of like old, like godlike nature of the Autobots and of the Transformers really well in that movie by having these simple themes which are so massive and big. And there's something really cool about like simple sort of robots that are so massive and big and powerful being represented with these themes. So and on their own, right? Like when you just listen to it in the piano, you can hear it, but it's not something compared to a lot of other themes that sticks out as particularly more heroic, more epic. I'm a big believer that the heroicism and epicness comes from writing a theme which doesn't get in the way of allowing your orchestration to make it big and epic and powerful and memorable. Now, there's a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot. There's definitely theory that goes into writing a theme like this to make it memorable, to make it catchy, to make it feel impactful. But it's not such a special theme insofar as the composition of it that really makes it have that epic feel. I think that a lot of that comes from the orchestration, and a video breaking down the orchestration of some of those themes would be much longer. So to start with, I want to go over some of these themes and break them down, and then potentially later on down the road get a little bit into the orchestration of them. But anyways, that's enough talking. Let's talk about what is going on here. So the theme, I think it's helpful first and foremost to break it down into what's going on harmonically. So, as I said, we're in D minor, and the theme is essentially it's 16 bars long, 8 bars depending on the BPM that you're writing in. But I'm just at 120, so we're using 16 bars. If we wanted to hop down to 60, we could get it down to 8. But the theme, there's 3 repetitions of the same 4-chord progression, which is D minor up to F major, down to C major, down to G minor. And that repeats 3 times. Sort of all very similar to a song in the sense that we've got 4 chords repeating. And then the 4th time through, we hop into a full cadence, a resolution back into the D minor. So after this 3rd time around of hitting our G minor, we hop up to a B flat major, and then to a C major, and then back to our D minor. And then whenever the piece ends or is transitioning out, he throws in this repetition of the cadence to give it an even more traditionally finished sound, which is where we go back to that B flat major, and then we go to an A minor, and then to our D major, or D minor, excuse me. But really, the main for the purposes of understanding the theme, the important part to get down is this 4-bar loop of D minor, F major, C major, G minor. So in the context of D minor, this means that we're using our 1 chord, our 3 chord, our 7 chord, and our 4 chord. And what's interesting about this is that the 1 and the 3 are gonna feel like home bass. The 1 chord is obviously as home as you can get. The 3 chord is a very home feeling key. In the context of a minor key where our 3 chord is major, part of what makes it feel so at home is that the F major chord has an F, an A, and a C. The F and the A are both notes which are contained in our D minor, in our home chord, in our 1 chord. So this 3 chord is a journey away from home, but it still feels very, relatively speaking, very home base. This C major chord is going to be our 7. It contains none of the notes from our D minor, so it feels far away from home, and it feels like it's a chord that does want to resolve to the up to the D major, or I keep saying D major, up to the D minor. So it feels like it wants to go back up. But instead, we're going down to this plagal cadence. We're going down to our 4 chord, to this G minor, which really wants to go somewhere. And then the tension gets resolved by bringing us back up into our 1, and we repeat. So you can think of it as home base, moving away from home, and then moving almost even further from home, where we really want to get back up to our D. So the 4 chord is not even going to give us a half cadence. This really feels like we're moving far away from home, and so it's this the repetitive nature of this 4 chord loop is very catchy. And then on top of it, we've got a melody which is very repetitive in its rhythm. That pattern is just repeated over and over and over again, minus this section right here, which is barely any different, and then minus our cadences at the end of the piece. Like, we're sticking to basically the same exact pattern here for the main context of the melody. And one thing to remember is that when it comes to themes and melodies, the beginning, the first 4 bars or so, is going to be the part that's going to be by far the most memorable. It's going to stick in people's heads more so than the rest of it. So having this intro to the theme be very consistent in its rhythm is going to be one thing that's going to make this super memorable, super catchy. The next thing you're going to notice is that we are not straying that far away from our D here. This D is really acting as an anchor. We're going a little bit above it, a little bit below it. And we're using these, I shouldn't say we, Steve's using these falls and then leaps to give it that awesome emotion. Most always he will follow, like he'll start with the melody starts with a fall, and then it goes up, which gives it a really heroic thing. As opposed to if we were to go down from our D to our A to it, if we were to go down to the F instead of up, we would get a much less heroic sounding feel. Same notes, but it sounds really out of place. There's that jump up. And one thing that I'll repeat over and over and over and over again is that jumps up, literally moving up in register, is really going to correlate with feelings of motivation, inspiration, and positive emotion. So he's very strategically using these leaps up to hit on downbeats where it's going to be super impactful, right? So we go up into this F on the downbeat. We go up into this E on the downbeat. We go up into this D on the downbeat. We go up, we go up, we go up. And it's only at our cadence, at our half cadence, at halfway through the melody, that we go down into this D to give it that soft feeling of coming to a pause before the theme continues. The other thing to notice is just how many of these notes are chord tones, right? So in this first bar, we've got a D minor chord. What are the notes that we're using? We're using D, A, and D, all notes that are contained in the D minor. We go up to an F major. We've got F and C, both notes that are contained in our F major. Then we go to a C major. We've got this E, G, and C, notes that make up the C major chord. And then we go to our G minor, and we've got a D down to the B flat, which are notes which are in the G minor. We quite literally here do not see our first note, which is not a member of the chord up until this F, which doesn't stand out as all because it's just acting as a passing tone between this G and this E, which both are notes in the chords. So part of what makes this feel so, which gives it the potential to have such this heroic and memorable quality to it, is the fact that we're not getting into 7 chords, into slash chords, into any sort of fancy harmonic or melodic material here. We're really sticking with notes which make up these major and minor chords. And if this is the style of music you're going for, if this is the kind of theme or kind of melody that you're trying to write, is one where you're going for catchiness above all else, this is going to be a prime way to do that. So far we've talked about leaps, and then and we've talked about notes which are contained within your chord. We've also got to look at the rhythm. Once again, I just want to quickly reinforce that we've got this dotted half note into 2/8 notes, into half note, into half note, and it's just repeated over and over and over again. And the first time we deviate from this is in our half cadence here, where we get this just nice, not standing out in any way, just feeling nice and smooth. It's just this run down the key of D minor until we hit our D, and then we go to the B flat, back up into our D. And then the second half through, we have the same first 4 bars. These are the exact same as the opening 4 bars of the piece. And here, after these 4 bars, we're getting into a perfect cadence here where we're ending on our 1 chord. And one quick harmonic thing to note is that so far, as I said earlier, we've been using four chords. We've been using D minor, F major, C major, and G minor. Now, there is one really important chord in the context of minor harmony that we have not used yet. And Steve didn't use it, I think, pretty intentionally, and it was to save it for this moment, which is that one really cool thing about minor is that the three chords which are going to feel most at home are going to be our 1, our 3, and our 6. In minor, the 1 is minor, but the 3 and the 6 are both major chords. So you can take advantage of this by getting chords which really sound very home base, which really sound like we're at home, but feel very triumphant because they're major. So the F major that we've been using up until this point does have two of our chord tones from our home chord, our D minor, but it doesn't have the D. Instead, it has this C. What's really awesome about the 6 chord, the major 6, is that it does contain our D. So the B flat major, of course, is going to be made up of a B flat, a D, and an F. And there's that D there. So it sets us up for this really heroic and sort of epic, but also very final sounding cadence where we are in minor and we go from our major 6 to our major 7 up into the minor 1. And so we get this sound. It ends sort of very softly. And because this is the first time we've hit this B flat, it really sticks out, and it's a point in the theme where we're in danger territory of potentially getting too repetitive and the theme losing a little bit of its energy. And by throwing in this B flat whilst continuing to keep the melody really at home on this D here is an awesome way to give it a little bit of variety and give us a new feeling of emotion, a sense of completion here as we reach this point. So I'm going to play it from the halfway point and notice what this B flat does. And then on the repetition of our perfect cadence here, instead of going from 6, 7, 1, we go 6, 5, 1, which, if you know a little bit about harmonic theory and cadences, 5, 1 is like the perfect cadence. And in D minor, our 5 chord is going to be A minor. So setting this up to introduce this chord for the first time at the end of the melody in the repetition of our cadence gives it a very complete feeling. So we get this first time through the cadence where the theme goes up to the 3 and then falls back down from the F to the E to the D, and then on this final repetition of the cadence, we basically just do the same thing, except for we go from the E up to the F, back down to the D. Very memorable, relatively simple, so to say, and then you set yourself up with having many longer extended notes here. If you pay attention to the melody and look how many of these notes are really sustained, you set yourself up you put yourself in great shape for counter melodies, for interesting rhythm. This these pieces are obviously very ostinato driven, so having these relatively simple melodies made up of chord tones puts you in an awesome place where you can have your theme being played potentially in the same register as your harmony in the ostinato, because it's not going to get in the way because they're the same notes. You're not going to be having clashes of seconds and other dissonant sounds like that. So this is relatively simple writing, which is all. I don't want to diminish the importance of writing a really catchy theme, but in many ways, so much of this is just setting himself up for the epic orchestration which comes down the line. So that's Arrival to Earth. Let's take a quick look at Bumblebee. So again, working in the context of D minor, our harmony here, we're going to be going from a D minor, this time straight to our major 6 to that B flat, back up toward D minor, and then 3 and then 7. F major, C major. And then the second time through, this melody, this theme can be thought of a little bit more as being in the context of sentence form as opposed to period form. If you're not familiar with the difference between period form and sentence form, I'm gonna link a playlist down to Ryan Leach's YouTube channel in the description, which goes over it in great detail. Almost every theme you've heard in, particularly in the world of film music, but in music just in general, almost every melody can really fall into one of the two camps. Arrival to Earth, I think, is a little bit more period form. This one falls a little bit more into sentence form. And really, the reason I say this is because these first 2 bars are going to be almost, they're not identically repeated, but they're almost identically repeated. And we go from this, harmonically, we're going from we're returning to this D minor again, which is the fact that this bar right here, this third bar, is such a repetition of our first bar, is sort of a telltale sign of sentence form. And then we move into the second half of the theme where there's a continuation, there's something different, although it's repetitive, it's still different. And this doesn't just feel like a complete repetition of the first half. There's a lot of similarity to give it a feeling of continuity, but there's a very clear distinction in what Steve is doing with the first half of this theme as opposed to the second half. The first half is really about the like, Bumblebee is like the good guy of all good guys. Like, he's not as sort of, he's not the representative of justice and heroicism the way that Optimus is, but he is like our main Transformer. He's the one who is like the best friend. He's always the best friend of the main character. And despite his sort of goofiness, there's this incredible, commitment to moral code or justice or whatever the buzzword value is that they use in X Transformers movie. Bumblebee represents it really well. And so there's something incredibly emotional, and we have this awesome emotional attachment to him. So the first half does the heroic, epic justice stuff, and then the second is all about, in a way, it's sort of like calming down and setting us up for whatever's going to come next. The second half to me almost just feels like it's like the entire thing is almost functioning as a cadence. It's just sort of settling down after the first half, which was so epic and heroic. So as far as the melody goes, we've got a little bit of a different rhythm, but a lot of the same concepts apply here, where we're going fall and then leap using chord tones, giving that really heroic vibe. And then it's a small leap, but it's a leap. So what Steve's doing, I imagine, when he sits down to write these themes, is the idea first and foremost was to come up with some lick, some motif, which is going to be memorable. This is the main idea. In this case, it's 4 bars long here. If you're working, I'm essentially working in double time. I think that this theme would be more appropriately written at like 60 or 70 BPM. But so imagine that this is 2 bars instead of 4. So the main idea here is really just this 2 bar. And then I would consider that sort of like setting us up for the repetition. That's not really part of the main idea. But is the main idea, which gets repeated. And that's the rhythm that we're repeating. So part of sentence form is that we're repeating this almost exactly. And this time we go, and then the second time, so we've got this D minor, which is being repeated exactly. And then instead of going into our 6, which again, remember, is a very home-sounding chord, we're going to our other home-sounding chord, which is going to be our 3. So this isn't going to sound all that different, but we're setting us up here for the climax, the peak. We're hitting the highest note. This is going to be a really big, epic sound. So as opposed to the Ravel to Earth theme, where when we're hitting our first halfway, or not our first, it's the halfway, it's the only one, but when we're hitting the halfway point of that theme, we're sort of falling down and settling down for this repetition because we want the epic heroicness to continue. This time we're hitting our climax, we're hitting our peak the first time through the theme. And it's not that uncommon for Steve to hit his climax note, his highest note, in the first half of the theme. I think he's very aware of this, like, I don't want to make it sound like it's like a rush to get to your biggest part, but it's like you don't want to wait too long. The listener will get bored. The epic, awesome, emotional, impactful moments of our orchestration, of our writing, of these themes have to come relatively fast, or else we just sort of like lose the momentum that we've been building. So whereas this first time through, we've got our leap up, but then we're going down. This time we're just continuing up, and we're using this G as a passing tone over our F major. We're going up from the root of F major, from this F up to the major third, and then we're falling back into our repetition, where instead of starting on our 1, this time the second half is starting on the major 6. It's using this descending bass line, staying diatonically. We're going from B flat, essentially using our major 6 here, and then a quick sort of, you can think of this as like the major 3 with the third and the bass, passing us down to our minor 2, which is this really it's certainly, it's not dissonant, but it's not it's not a chord that you would associate with awesome, epic, heroic themes, so to say. It's sort of it's a chord which has this very clear, I'm not even sure the word I'm looking for, but it's like this settling down moment of setting us up for the end of our theme, where clearly we're like reaching the end here. So I think if I play this, it'll make more sense, but just know that we're going 6, 3, 2, and then up to our 1, and then back down, ending on a half cadence here on our 7, or excuse me, not really a half cadence. We're going 1 down to our 6, sort of setting ourselves up for continuation. This piece is not one which it doesn't have a perfect cadence involved, so it doesn't ever really feel completed. And in this way, it almost feels like a theme that you could just repeat infinitely and it would never really feel done. So it definitely is setting itself up for more, which I think is, in the context of the overall film, right, there are only a few themes that we want to really feel completed. Otherwise, it'll just feel like we're stopping and starting without necessarily building momentum. So I imagine that there's some strategic choices going on there in the context of the overall film. But if this was just a theme on its own, we could probably almost like reverse this and go like 6. If this was its own theme, it might make more sense to go like 6-5, 6-7 up to the 1. End it this way. And we could almost even, we could reference the arrival to Earth here, and sort of do. You get you get the idea. But that's not the way it goes, and that's because it's not meant to have the same level of completeness and finishedness to it that that the main Arrival to Earth theme does, or that maybe the Autobots theme does, because this is Bumblebee. There's always going to be something else coming after it. So instead, we get the second half, which takes the rhythmic idea from this first bar, and instead of going into what we established as the response to it, the sort of call and response, we're repeating our call. We're going call, call, response. So we're sort of delaying the finale of the piece. And this is what I mean by the second half is just sort of like a tension. It's like building tension whilst simultaneously calming down, if that makes any sense at all. But I think if you listen to it, you can maybe hear what I'm saying. And you hear it like it, the theme wants to be played again. And on and on and on we go. So I think that I have touched on everything I wanted to touch on. I hope that there was something interesting there for you to learn. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section, and I will catch you all next time. Take care.